The coffee is cold in my hands, a forgotten comfort. Outside, the city stretches, glittering like broken glass under a sky that refuses to weep. They're still inside. Upstairs. Living in the future he bought for them. Living in Unit 4B. The key is heavy in my pocket. He doesn't know I have it. He doesn't know I own the entire building. Not yet. He just thinks I'm the woman he left, the wife he betrayed, standing on the sidewalk in the fading light, maybe hoping for a scene. He always underestimated me. That was his first mistake. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when his hands on my back felt like safety. A time when our small apartment felt like a palace, built on shared dreams and cheap takeout. We built a life, brick by painstaking brick. I worked, he worked, we saved, we planned. Future tense was always we, a comfortable we, predictable, perhaps a little mundane but solid, anchored. We talked about retirement, about a little house with a garden, about growing old together, two gnarled trees twisted together but still standing strong against the wind. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was ours. It was enough. More than enough. He was handsome, in that quiet, understated way. Reliable. A good provider. A man of routine. Coffee at 6:30, train at 7:15, home by 6 o'clock. The rhythm of it was soothing, a quiet song playing in the background of our lives. We didn't need grand gestures. Small things mattered. The way he'd leave my favorite mug out, the shared laugh over a bad movie, the comfortable silence of reading in the same room. We were partners. Equals. At least I thought we were. I believed in the foundation we'd built. I believed in him. The first crack wasn't a thunderclap. It was a whisper. A feeling. A phone left face down. Late nights that stretched later. A new phone, suddenly. Work, he'd say, his eyes just a fraction too bright. A new cologne, something sharper, less familiar. Small things. Easy to dismiss. Easy to rationalize. My mind, trained over years to trust him implicitly, worked overtime to smooth over the edges, to sand down the rough spots into something acceptable, something normal. He was stressed, I told myself. Big project at work. Nothing more. Then came the paperwork. It wasn't hidden well. Maybe he was getting careless. Or maybe he simply never imagined I would look. He'd asked me to grab something from his briefcase, a folder he'd left behind. I pulled it open, and tucked inside, beneath spreadsheets and reports, was a thick envelope. It wasn't addressed to us. It was addressed to him. From a real estate lawyer I didn't recognize. My hands trembled as I pulled out the contents. A deed. A mortgage agreement. For a condominium. In the city. My blood ran cold. We owned our apartment. Why would he be buying another property? As an investment? He would have discussed that with me. We discussed everything financial. Every major purchase. Every investment. Every significant expense. This was a ghost. A secret world I knew nothing about. The name on the deed wasn't mine. It wasn't ours. It was a name I recognized, vaguely. A junior colleague he'd mentioned in passing a few times. Young. Bright. A real go-getter, he'd called her, with a tone I hadn't questioned then. Now, the tone replayed in my mind, taking on a sickening new resonance. My world tilted. The air left my lungs. I stood in our living room, the room we'd painted together, the room where we'd built our life, holding proof that he was building another life elsewhere. With someone else. The address on the deed felt like a physical blow. Unit 4B. At a building downtown. A building I'd walked past countless times, never knowing a piece of my future, a piece of my husband, was being hidden within its walls. I didn't confront him immediately. The shock was too profound. It was a physical thing, a weight in my chest that made it hard to breathe, hard to think. I went to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection. Who was this woman? Who was the man I'd shared my bed with for 15 years? The man who kissed me goodbye every morning? I felt like a stranger in my own skin. in my own home. The next few days were a blur of pretending. Pretending everything was normal. Laughing at his jokes, asking about his day, sharing meals. Every smile felt like a mask cracking. Every touch felt like a violation. I watched him, searching his face for some sign of the man I thought I knew, or some telltale flicker of the man the paperwork revealed. He seemed normal, easy, untroubled. That was perhaps the cruelest part. The ease with which he carried his secret, the seamless way he lived his double life, while I was drowning in the truth I hadn't even articulated yet. I started digging. Quietly. Carefully. I accessed bank statements he didn't know I knew how to access. I went through his call logs when he was in the shower. The name appeared repeatedly. Text messages, veiled but undeniable. Reservations at restaurants he never took me to. The paper trail grew thick and damning. The mortgage payments, the condo fees, the utility bills, all paid from accounts I had access to, accounts built with our money, our savings, our shared future. He wasn't just having an affair. He was funding a new life, a future with her, using the foundation of the life he was systematically dismantling with me. He was bleeding our shared assets dry to build her a nest. The anger came later, a slow burn that started in my gut and spread through my limbs like poison. It wasn't just the betrayal of our vows. It was the financial betrayal, the calculated dismantling of our security, the audacity of using our money I had worked hard for, money we had sacrificed for, to buy his mistress a home. It was a strategic strike against me, against my future, against everything we had built. When I finally confronted him, there were no dramatics. No screaming, no throwing things. My voice was unnervingly calm, even to myself. I laid the documents on the table, the deed, the mortgage statements, printouts of texts. He stared at them, his face draining of color. The easy mask fell away, revealing something scared and cornered. He didn't deny it. Couldn't deny it. The evidence was irrefutable. He stammered, offered pathetic excuses. Midlife crisis. Feeling trapped. She understood him. All the clichés. The tears came then, his tears. Not tears of remorse for the pain he'd inflicted, but tears of self-pity, tears of a man caught red-handed, his carefully constructed lie collapsing around him. He cried about how hard it had been, how he didn't know what to do. He cried because he was suffering the consequence of being discovered. That was the moment something inside me hardened. The grief didn't vanish, but it was joined, then overtaken, by a cold, sharp resolve. His tears meant nothing to me. They were crocodile tears shed for his own predicament, not for the woman he had shattered. He had attacked my home, my heart, my financial security. He had used our shared strength to build a separate kingdom for himself and his new queen. He had underestimated my capacity not just for pain, but for retaliation. I asked him to leave that night. He packed a bag, still sniffling, still muttering about how complicated everything was. He asked about the condo. "What about 4B?" he asked, as if I might consider letting him keep it, perhaps suggesting we could co-own it, or that it could be part of a settlement. His mind was still operating on the level of asset division within the framework he had established. He had no idea the wheels already turning in my mind. He went to her. Of course. To the future he'd purchased, the one he thought was safe, hidden away from the wreckage he'd left behind. The initial days alone were a raw wound. The quiet of the apartment was deafening. Every object, every shared space, echoed with his absence and the magnitude of his betrayal. Friends offered comfort, outrage on my behalf. My family was devastated. The legal process began, slow and emotionally draining. Lawyers talked numbers, assets, liabilities. The condo came up. His lawyer listed it as an asset to be potentially divided. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Eleanor, saw my face when they mentioned it. The cold resolve must have shown. "What do you want to do about the condo?" Eleanor asked me one afternoon, poring over financial statements in her sterile office. I looked out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere in that concrete jungle was Unit 4B.
his sanctuary.
Their love nest, paid for with my sacrifice, my trust, my life. I want it, I said, my voice quiet but firm. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. We can fight for your share, of course. It's a marital asset, acquired with marital funds, despite the name on the deed. We have a strong case. No, I said. You don't understand. I don't just want my share. I want the whole thing. I want the building. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, her professional mask slipping for a fraction of a second. The building? The entire building, I repeated. Unit 4B is in that building. He bought her a condo there. He thought he was putting down roots there. I want to uproot him. I want to take away the ground they stand on. It sounded crazy, even to me saying it aloud. But the idea had taken root in the dark, fertile soil of my anger and humiliation. He had used money as a weapon, as a tool of secrecy and betrayal. I would use money as my shield and my sword. He had built a small, secret world within those walls. I would claim the entire world and dismantle his within it. Eleanor was skeptical at first. Acquiring an entire residential building is a massive undertaking. Complex. Expensive. Risky. It wasn't about winning a divorce settlement anymore. It was about a major real estate acquisition. But I had resources he didn't know about. An inheritance from my grandmother, carefully invested, a quiet nest egg I hadn't needed to touch. My own successful career had provided substantial savings, independent of our joint accounts. He had been so focused on diverting our money, he hadn't paid close enough attention to mine. And I had connections. My father's best friend was a major player in the city's real estate market, a man known for aggressive, strategic acquisitions. I went to him. I laid out the situation, not just the personal betrayal, but the financial details, the timing, the potential. He saw the cold calculation beneath my personal pain. He saw an opportunity where I saw vengeance. Or perhaps he saw my vengeance as a fascinating business opportunity. Either way, he was intrigued. The next few months were a blur of financial statements, market analyses, legal consultations, and hushed meetings. It was a different kind of battleground. Not the emotional wreckage of the divorce, but the cold, hard numbers of business. My days were filled with property valuations, loan applications, negotiation strategies. My evenings were spent poring over spreadsheets, learning the language of real estate acquisition, understanding terms like cap rate, NOI, due diligence. He had no idea. He was likely feeling confident, maybe even triumphant. He had his new life, his new apartment, his new partner, while I was left to pick up the pieces. He assumed I was simply navigating the predictable path of divorce, fighting over assets, alimony, perhaps the value of the condo he'd bought. He never imagined I was playing a completely different game. A game where the table wasn't the divorce court, but the city's real estate market. There were hurdles. Always hurdles. Competing bids. Financing complexities. The existing tenants. Legal red tape. Moments of doubt clawed at me in the dead of night. Was I insane? Was this vengeful pursuit worth the immense financial risk, the emotional strain? Was I letting his betrayal consume me entirely? But then I would remember the look on his face when he cried those fake tears, the casual cruelty of his deception, the fact that he was using our money to fund their happiness, and the resolve would harden again. This wasn't just revenge. It was reclaiming my power. It was a declaration that I would not be a victim, left broken and diminished by his choices. The acquisition moved forward, quietly, deliberately. My real estate contact was a master strategist. We assembled a team, worked in secrecy. The current owner of the building was looking to offload it quietly, eager for a quick sale. We presented an attractive offer, moved fast on the due diligence. It felt like a high-stakes poker game. Bluffing, waiting, making calculated moves. All the while, the divorce proceedings continued on a separate track. He and his lawyer pushed for settlement, eager to finalize things. They were negotiating based on the world they saw, our joint assets, the market value of our apartment, his salary, my salary, the value of the condo, as if it were just another property. They had no idea the ground was shifting beneath their feet. There was a moment, weeks before the deal closed, when I almost slipped. He called, ostensibly to discuss some minor detail about dividing furniture. He sounded relaxed. Annoyingly so. He mentioned plans, casual remarks about the neighborhood where he now lived. "There's a great little cafe just around the corner from 4B, he said, completely unaware of the storm I was brewing. My hand tightened around the phone. I wanted to scream, to tell him exactly what was coming. But I held back. Not yet. The element of surprise was my most powerful weapon. The deal closed on a Tuesday. A gray, rainy Tuesday that felt utterly anticlimactic for the scale of the transaction. I sat in a lawyer's office, signing papers, the rain drumming against the windows. And just like that, the building was mine. All of it. From the ground floor commercial space to the roof, every single unit, every hallway, every brick. Including Unit 4B. The feeling wasn't triumph. Not immediate, anyway. It was a quiet, deep sense of inevitability. Like the world had tilted back on its axis, not necessarily righting itself, but finding a new balance. The anger was still there, a cold ember in my gut, but it was banked now, controlled. The next step was purely business. As the new owner, I had rights and responsibilities. The existing tenants were on various leases. Some would stay, their leases honored. Others were month to month. And then there was Unit 4B. He had bought it in his name. The mistress wasn't on the deed, only living there with him. As far as the law was concerned, they were occupants. And now their landlord was me. I had the eviction notices drawn up immediately. For Unit 4B, standard legal procedure for non-payment, I knew they wouldn't pay rent to me, or breach of lease, occupancy terms, perhaps. My lawyer advised caution, doing everything strictly by the book. No shortcuts. No emotional theatrics that could jeopardize the legal process. This needed to be clean. Surgical. The notice period was 30 days. 30 days for them to live in blissful ignorance in the home he'd bought with stolen happiness. 30 days for the irony to ripen. I didn't see him during those 30 days. Our lawyers communicated. The divorce negotiations plodded along, still focused on our apartment, our savings, his assumed future expenses in his new life. He never mentioned the building. Never mentioned a new landlord. He truly had no idea. The day came when the notices were served. Standard legal process. A courier delivered them. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. The paperwork, the law, the cold machinery of real estate ownership would do the work for me. Later that day, my phone rang. It was his number. I hesitated for a long moment, watching it ring. Then I answered. His voice was different. Not smooth, not relaxed. It was tight, strained. "What? What is this?" he choked out. "We got a notice. An eviction notice. For the condo." My voice was flat. "Yes. Unit 4B. Standard procedure. The new owner is making changes." "The new owner?" He sounded confused. "Who is the new owner? Did the building sell?" "It did," I said. A little tremor of something, maybe anticipation, maybe nerves, ran through me. "Well, who?" "We need to talk to them. Explain." "It's my unit." "It was." I corrected him gently. "As of last month, it belongs to the new owner." Silence stretched on the line. I could hear his ragged breathing. The silence wasn't confusion anymore. It was dawning horror. "Who?" he whispered. The volume was low, but the terror was palpable. "Who bought it?" I took a slow breath. The city lights were starting to wink on outside my window again. "I did," I said. The silence this time was absolute. A heavy, dead weight on the line. I waited. And then I heard it. A sound I never expected. A sob. Not the self-pitying sniffling from months ago. This was deeper. A wrenching sound. A sound of a man whose foundation had just been vaporized. You bought the building," he choked out, the words thick with tears. "Yes," I confirmed. "All of it. And Unit 4B is part of it." He started crying properly then. Loud, messy sobs. But why? How?"
It was.
It was ours.
Hers.
I bought it for her. With our money, I reminded him, my voice still calm, colder than the city outside. Money we saved together. Money I helped earn. You used our security to build her a future. I simply reacquired the asset. The whole asset. His crying intensified. It wasn't just grief. It was the utter devastation of his plan, his betrayal, being turned back on him with a force he never anticipated. He had thought small, one unit hidden away. I had thought big, the entire structure that contained his secret. He had aimed to dispossess me of a future. I had dispossessed him of the future he stole. You can't do this, he sobbed. Where will she go? Where will we go? That, I said, is no longer my concern. The notice period is 30 days. You'll need to find new accommodation. I recommend you start looking immediately. The market is competitive. I could hear the mistress's voice in the background now, sharp, questioning, then horrified as he presumably relayed the news through his sobs. The sounds of their shared panic filled the receiver. This is cruel, he gasped between sobs. Is it? I asked. Or is it just business? You made a transaction. I made a bigger one. You invested in a future built on lies. I invested in taking back control. You sowed betrayal, and now you're reaping an eviction notice. It seems remarkably fair from where I'm standing. He tried to argue, to plead, to appeal to a past we no longer shared. He mentioned all the years, the history, the unfairness of my action compared to his relatively understandable mistake, as he likely saw it. I listened for a moment, then cut him off. The conversation is over, I said. My lawyer will be in touch regarding the divorce settlement. Your lawyer knows where to send the papers. As for your living situation, that's entirely in your hands now. Good luck. I hung up. My hand was shaking slightly, but not from fear or sadness. From the sheer, potent energy of that moment.
He cried.
The man who had systematically dismantled my life, who had planned his escape route with cold, calculated financial moves, cried because his own game had been played back at him, but on a scale he couldn't comprehend.
He thought he was stealing a piece of my life.
I showed him I could acquire the entire board. The aftermath wasn't a sudden burst of happiness or closure. It was quieter, more complex. The divorce finalized. The settlement reflected the new reality, though the true financial implications of my acquisition were separate from the marital asset division. He lost the condo, of course. He lost the future he'd envisioned there. I heard, through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, that they struggled to find a comparable place quickly, that they had to downsize, that things were difficult. I didn't gloat.
Didn't need to.
The simple fact of their eviction notice, served by me, was enough. It wasn't about revenge consuming me. It was about correcting an imbalance of power he had created. It was about refusing to be the discarded victim, the person left behind in the ruins. Owning the building has been interesting. It's not just a trophy. It's a business.
Tenant, maintenance, finance.
It demands attention. It's hard work, but it's also a constant reminder. A concrete, brick-and-mortar testament to navigating a crisis and coming out on the other side, not unscathed, but stronger. I walk past Unit 4B sometimes. It's renovated now, rented to a young couple starting their own life. A life built, hopefully, on honesty and trust. The pain of the betrayal still surfaces sometimes, a dull ache in quiet moments. The years we shared, the man I thought he was, that's not something you just erase. But it's no longer the dominant feeling. It's layered now with something else. Something like resilience. Something like unexpected strength. Something like the quiet satisfaction of reclaiming not just my life, but the very ground he tried to steal from under me. He bought her a future with my past. I built my own future on the foundation of his failure. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.